Slavery has been an unfortunate reality throughout human history. It has existed in various societies and civilizations, and it has been justified in part by religious beliefs. Many ancient societies, including those in Mesopotamia, Egypt, Greece, and Rome, practiced slavery. And religious texts from these civilizations sometimes mentioned or regulated the institution of slavery. But did religious beliefs play a role in perpetuating or opposing this institution? Welcome to Mythology Mysteries, where we delve into the enigmatic world of ancient beliefs and traditions. Today, we're exploring a complex and sensitive topic, the connection between slavery and religion, and why it was not forbidden. As we journey through history and religious texts, we'll unravel the intricate relationship and its impact on societies around the world. In many religious texts, there are passages that either condone or even promote slavery. The Bible contains several passages that refer to slavery, including instructions on how to treat slaves and how to buy and sell them. The Quran and the Torah also contain passages that refer to slavery, as in other ancient beliefs. Let's embark on a journey through various religious texts and historical contexts to uncover the truth. Here are a few passages from different religious texts related to the topic of slavery. Christianity, Ephesians 6:5. Slaves, obey your earthly masters with respect and fear and with sincerity of heart, just as you would obey Christ. Ephesians 6:5 is a verse from the New Testament of the Bible, specifically from the book of Ephesians. This passage emphasizes the concept of servanthood and provides guidance to Christian slaves on how they should approach their roles. The verse encourages slaves to be obedient to their earthly masters with respect and fear, not only when their masters are watching, but also when they are not present. Timothy 6:1-2. All who are under the yoke of slavery should consider their masters worthy of full respect, so that God's name and our teaching may not be slandered. Timothy 6:1-2 is a passage from the New Testament of the Bible. It addresses the relationship between slaves and their Christian masters. In these verses, the Apostle Paul, who is writing to Timothy, provides instructions on how Christian slaves should respond to their masters. He emphasizes that slaves who have Christian masters should respect and honor them even more because they are fellow believers. The passage advises slaves not to despise their masters or take advantage of their faith, but to serve them all the more faithfully. It is essential to recognize that the Bible does not explicitly condemn or abolish slavery in the Old Testament. Instead, it provides regulations aimed at ensuring the humane treatment of slaves. As a result, some critics argue that the Bible tolerates or condones slavery due to these regulations. In the New Testament, the apostles and Jesus Christ emphasized principles of love, kindness, and equality among believers. For example, Galatians 3:28, Philemon 1:16, Ephesians 6:9. Though slavery was still present during the New Testament period, there are no explicit commands to abolish slavery. However, some scholars argue that the New Testament principles of love and respect for others laid the groundwork for the eventual rejection of slavery within Christian societies. Islam. Just like in Christianity, slavery was allowed in Islam. The Quran contains laws governing slavery. These laws allowed for the ownership of slaves, but they also placed limits on how slaves could be treated. For example, slaves were not to be abused and had some rights. Here are some passages. And Allah has favored some of you over others in provision. But those who have been much favored would not share their wealth with those bondspeople in their possession, making them their equals. Do they then deny Allah's favors? O believers, the law of retaliation is set for you in cases of murder, a free man for a free man, a slave for a slave, and a female for a female. Allah sets forth a parable, a slave who lacks all means, compared to a free man to whom we granted a good provision, of which he donates freely, openly, and secretly. Are they equal? Praise be to Allah, in fact most of them do not know. These passages, while mentioning slavery, also emphasized the importance of treating slaves with kindness and fairness. Additionally, Islam set certain rights and protections for slaves that were relatively progressive compared to some other contemporary cultures. For example, slaves had the right to be treated with dignity, to receive food and clothing, and not to be overburdened with heavy tasks. However, it did not forbid slavery in any passages from Quran. Judaism. Slavery was allowed in Judaism. The Torah, the first 5 books of the Hebrew Bible, just like in the Quran and the Bible, contains laws governing slavery. These laws allowed for the ownership of slaves, but they also placed limits on how slaves could be treated. For example, slaves were not to be abused, and they were to be freed after a certain number of years. Deuteronomy 15:12-18. These verses reiterate the rules for the treatment of slaves. They state that slaves were to be treated as members of your household and that they were to be freed after 6 years. They also state that if a slave chose to remain with their master after 6 years, they were to be pierced through the ear with an awl as a sign of their permanent servitude. Leviticus 25:39-46. These verses further elaborate on the rules for the treatment of slaves. They state that slaves could not be treated harshly and that they were to be treated as hired workers. They also state that Hebrew slaves were to be freed after 7 years, but that non-Hebrew slaves could be kept as slaves for life. Exodus 21:1-11. This passage from the book of Exodus gives instructions on how to treat slaves in ancient Israel. It states that slaves can be bought and sold, but they must be treated fairly and humanely. The question of why religions didn't universally forbid slavery throughout history is complex and multifaceted. It's important to recognize that religious texts and beliefs have been interpreted and adapted differently across various societies and historical periods. Here are some factors that may shed light on this issue. 1. Historical context. Slavery was a widespread practice in ancient times and throughout much of human history. Many of the world's major religions, including Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, emerged during periods when slavery was an integral part of the social and economic systems. As a result, these religions had to navigate existing cultural norms and practices. 2. Cultural norms and acceptance. Slavery was deeply ingrained in the social fabric of many ancient societies. It was considered a legitimate means of obtaining labor, and slaves were often acquired through conquest, debt, or as a result of economic hardships. Challenging such deeply ingrained practices would have been difficult, even for religious leaders. 3. Limited understanding of human rights. The concept of human rights and human dignity, as we understand it today, was not as well developed in ancient times. People often had hierarchical views of society, where certain individuals or groups were deemed inferior or subservient to others. 4. Interpretation of religious texts. Religious texts contain a mixture of moral teachings, historical narratives, and cultural practices. While some religious texts do contain principles that promote compassion and kindness, the interpretation of these texts can vary widely. In some cases, verses or passages may have been interpreted to justify or accommodate existing practices like slavery. 5. Gradual moral progress. Societal values and moral principles have evolved over time. As societies progressed, they began to question the morality of slavery, leading to eventual abolition movements in many parts of the world. This moral progress has also influenced religious interpretations and led to changing attitudes towards slavery. 6. Selective focus. Some religious leaders and institutions may have chosen to focus on certain aspects of their teachings while neglecting or downplaying others. Factors such as political power, economic interests, or maintaining social order could have influenced their priorities. It's crucial to note that while some religious texts may not explicitly forbid slavery, they do contain principles that promote compassion, justice, and equality. As societies have evolved, religious and ethical interpretations have also evolved, leading to the rejection of practices like slavery. Today, many religious communities actively promote human rights and social justice issues, including the fight against modern forms of slavery and exploitation. Let me know in the comments what your thoughts about this topic are, and if we miss anything that could help us toward the truth. Join us next time on Mythology Mysteries as we continue to unravel the secrets of ancient civilizations and their enduring impact on our lives. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share this video to support our journey into the fascinating world of mythology. Until then, stay curious.